on, y'all? Good afternoon, good day, good evening, good night, depending on what part of your legend globe you are on. Hello and welcome to another edition of Hanging with Who right here live on MSPWaves.com. Also, if you don't listen or watch us on MSPWaves.com and you want to participate in the live chat, we're over here in the Peace, Abundance, and Liberty Discord. Just scroll down to when you find the MSP Waves broadcast, and the audience is right above it. And you can hang along and type along with us and join in on the fun and shenanigans and everything else going on over here on our wonderful weekly podcasts. Oh, man. Yeah, please forgive me for the technical mishaps. You know, I've been doing this a long time. Some of y'all already know. And since my early days in pirate radio and then internet radio, we used to call it, and then of course now it's called podcasting. Things have changed a great deal. I've talked about this a lot. I got to turn off my cell phone. I usually do this right before I go on the air because I don't like having extraneous signals, extracurricular signals around the equipment. Not sure if you heard the little buzzing happening a second ago. And it may not have been my phone because I actually don't have any incoming texts or anything, but I think there's signals incoming and outgoing probably 24/7 nonstop, particularly with phones like mine where they're like hyper on the grid. I have a really cheap phone with a cheap plan, and every so often I know it's listening and it's doing all kinds of crazy things even when I've got it here asleep. Anyway, if you've just joined, thank you. And if you've been a long-time listener, thank you so much for your support. As I said, you're listening to Hanging with Who. This is officially my fourth season, second season here on MSPWaves.com, and I absolutely appreciate y'all still having me despite all the things going on around Discord and Steemit and whatnot. I think we need to hang tough, y'all. There's been, we've talked about this on the air before, and some of you guys have, who are also co-hosts here on MSP have talked about this a lot, and there's been a lot. Steemit was basically a pioneering platform, it's the first of its kind. In many ways, it's still one of a kind, even though a lot of other decentralized, blockchain-based, social media type platforms have popped up ever since. A couple of which I've had, I've toyed around with, and one which I actually has now gone away. Sola. I haven't talked much about this. I used to use Sola. I used to post all of my posts on there. And I used to love scrolling through it. I thought it was a great little platform. Kind of like, so I discovered Sola very quickly after having discovered Steemit by looking for other decentralized alternative versions of things like Twitter and Instagram and such. And Sola was one of the first ones that popped up, and I started using it immediately. I had earned a bunch. It definitely was worth, a couple of cents here and there, and it was climbing a little bit along with all the other cryptocurrencies. And April 1st of this year, I was following Sola's official Facebook. Everybody, using Sola, a lot of people would be posting their links on Facebook to get the up. Well, it wasn't called upvotes over there, but kind of like a Steemit sharing page over on Facebook. There's quite a few of those. There's a couple of them are really good. So Sola had announced on April 1st that they were going to be no more. That on whatever date, I forget it was, that they were going to be shutting down. And of course, all the comments were just like, oh, happy April Fools, ha ha ha, LOL, whatever. And I actually, even though I kind of was like, yeah, it's probably an April Fool's thing, I thought in the back of my mind, I don't know, they seem pretty serious about it, the way the post was written. And sure enough, on the date that they had announced, Sola was no more. I'm not really sure why. I didn't really look into it much. I know some articles had come out, and some of the devs and the executives of Sola did explain what was going on, and I really didn't pay much attention to it because I thought, well, here goes what I thought was a great platform that I was definitely making use of, and quite a number of Steemians were actually. I followed almost everyone I followed on there is on Steemit. For instance, Papa Pepper, a lot of you are familiar with, was posting like multiple times a day on Sola. They had a really great app too. One thing I noticed, like for instance, Steemit till now hasn't really had well, as far as I know, doesn't have an official app. eSteam's probably the best one that I've used. There's a number of others. I'm sure some of you can turn me on, maybe even something better than eSteam. But Sola had their own official app, and there's like when the second update came out, I actually thought it was pretty flawless. I thought it worked very very well. Um, but it's gone. So, so let me get back to kind of the point where there's been so much kind of love hate relationship going on. Oh, let's see. Crimson gives just typed, "Hi, Crimmy, what's going on? I don't know about better, but One Ramp is really great for creatives." So I'm guessing One Ramp is a Steam-based app for your small, handheld devices. We'll look that up and at some point, and you can all look it up for yourselves and find out if it's or Crim is typing, and maybe will let us know a little bit briefly what it is. That would be cool. So there's been so much kind of like a love hate thing going on with the Steam community, and I've said this before. People have jumped ship. People are onboarding. Some people are onboarding and going, this is stupid. What am I doing here? And fortunately, at least one person that I onboarded is doing very well and kind of understands what's going on with. You guys are gonna hear Lugnut a little bit on the air. He's a very vocal golden lab mixed with Pit. Anyway, as I was saying, so people. Someone I onboarded has been doing well, and he was kind of involved in investing a little bit in crypto, and he'd been doing, for instance, he got on this platform, website, which I didn't look much into, and I don't want to even tell you the wrong information, but he was able to do Bitcoin loans, very very micro loans, where he was going on this website with smart contracts and loaning very very small amounts of Bitcoin to random individuals. And somehow being able to verify their credibility through this website and making a tiny bit of change on top of it, small amounts, but I mean with crypto we know that small amounts can add up to a lot very 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 quickly, and sometimes not so quickly. But that's just the nature of the beast, and I've said this before and I'll keep saying it again. Why jump ship when we've got a decentralized platform where there's no censorship, where you can do just about the same thing you do on mainstream social media. You can sit there, waste your time scrolling away all day, looking at cute pictures of kitties, or you can be really involved in the community and active, and and everything in between. And while you're doing that, you're accruing, even if it's just a little bit of chump change. Who doesn't want a little bit of extra scratch? You know what I mean? And if you don't even bother with the money, if you forget about that and just keep posting and just keep liking and upvoting and just keep commenting, and those comments can get upvoted. If you, like I said this before, if you ignore the monetary aspect of it for however long. I mean, look, some of us have been using Facebook for a decade and not making a penny off of it. So if we do the same thing with Steemit and the other decentralized blockchain-based platforms, 10 years from now, my God, some of us are going to turn around and be able to buy a house or make a car payment. And so I don't want to sound like a broken record. I'm going to get off this topic real quick, but that's where I stand on the whole, jumping ship, onboarding, using these decentralized platforms, particularly Steemit. I did start to read an article today about the new what's going on over at Steemit Inc. I try to stay, somewhat. I try not to get myself too involved and read too deeply into what's going on, the inner workings and the politics and the business behind Steemit, because up till now I really respect what they do. I don't agree with everything, but it seems to me that they've been doing well. It seems to me that they haven't done me wrong, they haven't done anyone I know wrong, and from when I just kind of skim through it a little bit, it all seems on the square to me. And then I go to the comments section, and the shit show, unbelievable. Some of it's just funny, and some of it makes sense and is understandable, but yeah, it's crazy, and it's almost reminiscent of the fuckery that happens on Facebook and everywhere else at times. So if you're watching and you're wondering what I'm sipping on, my wife and I recently started working at Asheville's first pioneering beer brewery called Highland Brewery, and not only do they pay fairly well, not only do they treat their employees very well, and it's a pretty cool and fun atmosphere to work in. It's also an awesome music venue, very family and dog friendly. When we, yeah, right? I said dog. He looked at us like, yeah, I want to go. Um, so not only is it very dog and family friendly, they've got indoor and outdoor stage for live music. Very, very high tech, very professional. It's humongous, the inside and the outside. And every time we get off of work, they open at noon. So by the time we get off around 4 or 5 o'clock, there's a whole bunch of families and people coming after work and children running around and people with their dogs, and they've got a lot of unbelievable. Oh, I think Mary's trying to tell me that she may have found us a bassist.
I did.
Okay, well we've met 2 bassists so far and that hasn't worked out. But
No, you're gonna love this guy.
So those of you who've been following along know that I started a live music project. Actually, Zig mentioned earlier, thank you, and played a terrible recording of us. Hip Hop is Dead, and we've been. There's one bassist who I know is going to come out and play with us, but he's committed to a band that he's been with for years. Actually, one of the coolest, most talented, and definitely one of the most popular local Grateful Dead cover bands. I normally don't like a lot of cover bands, particularly Grateful Dead, because I absolutely love Grateful Dead, and sometimes the cover bands are hard to stomach. But every once in a while, something like Dark Star Orchestra pops up, and these guys are called Dirty Dead. There's another one around here called Funkle Sam, who they sometimes exchange musicians with. And so Eric Swanson's their bass player, and I actually have some footage for you guys of one of their recent shows, and I'm going to shoot a couple of upcoming shows. I was supposed to shoot one tonight. Not sure if we're going to make it by the time I get off the air here, and we haven't done grocery shopping for the week, and I know we're still pretty tired from a long week of work, so I don't know if we're going to make it tonight, but they're always playing. They're gigging all over. They get a little bit out-of-town gigs, and so they've agreed to let me shoot a bunch of their shows. I've shot one already. I'm going to wait till I've got a bunch of footage and a couple of interviews down to cut together, and then I'm going to have them on the air live with us to chat with you people and talk about what's up with Dirty Dead. And so anyway, Eric Swanson, their bass player, he's definitely going to be jamming with us at some point, but not sure if he's going to be a permanent fixture in Hip Hop is Dead because he's already committed to Dirty Dead. And if you're wondering what the hell I'm talking about, so it's a live music project that we started very recently with a couple of amazing percussionists, myself as the DJ, and I might have found a trumpet player. I'm not sure. That's a recent that's something very recent development. So we'll see how that goes. And it's what I've been telling people is that we're a Grateful Dead cover band that doesn't play Grateful Dead songs. Instead, we play live hip hop and EDM with a very heavy psychedelic influence from the Grateful Dead in terms of lifestyle and culture and philosophy and that sort of thing. Musical influence for sure. So anyway, along with Hip Hop is Dead, I do have to talk about this for a moment. I've been slacking a little bit, and we've kind of been behind on our timeline with marketing and whatnot, and the tour, due in large part to car trouble. I mean, that's just the bottom line. We recently acquired a used 2004 Honda Odyssey, and we did believe it was in great condition. We're not stupid. We've bought a bunch of used cars in the past. My wife is very mechanically inclined. I'm somewhat savvy, and just some things we just couldn't anticipate until we drove it around for a little while. And it's a little bit more serious, and we're not able to travel as far as we would have liked. So we've actually missed a couple of festivals already. A gig that we are not going to miss, and if you're anywhere near Baltimore, Maryland, on June 29th, I will have the official flyer coming from John Vibes pretty soon, and the Facebook invite is already up. It's called Novel Sounds. If you know about John Vibes, some of you do. He was one of the prominent rave promoters on the East Coast for a long time. He's now a very well-known lecturer and author. He's about to release his 5th book. It's called Paper Squares and Purple Stars. I'm actually in the book. It's pretty cool. And so he's basically throwing a rave. It's not really a rave. It's more a club event, but, definitely rave, a lot of EDM. And we're going to have 2 sections with music, indoor and outdoor. He's booked some top talent who I cannot release just yet. He's going to drop the lineup on Monday. But I can tell you that Hip Hop is Dead is officially on the bill. We are going to actually be playing 2 extended sets in the outdoor smoking section, which is right by the front door. We have to come in and out near the parking lot. So as soon as you pull up, at some point you're going to hear Hip Hop is Dead rocking out, doing their thing, and it's going to be really awesome. I'm truly honored to be doing this for John. If you're, like I said, if you're anywhere near Baltimore, the exact address I'm going to have, and I'm going to make a post, and I'm going to be spreading the flyer around by Monday, late in the day Monday. If you can make it, it's going to actually start at 9 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, he's going to have, forgive me, at 8 o'clock, he's going to have a panel and a question and answer, and then the music starts promptly at 9 o'clock inside and outside. And so that's going to be awesome. It's called Novel Sounds, and it's actually a costume party. We're hoping that everybody will dress up as their favorite character from a book. I haven't quite figured out, because I don't read a lot of fiction. I read a lot. I've read, God, maybe hundreds of books. But not a lot of fiction. For me to read fiction, it's got to be like some really, really, really top-notch stuff. I'll tell you who I really love as far as fiction goes. I like Gregory Maguire. He wrote the Wicked series, Wicked, which is a Broadway musical. What is it? A Lion Among Men, Son of a Witch. Awesome. I read all 3 of those, and his writing style is absolutely superb. I love Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, the Lord of the Rings series, The Hobbit, but I feel like someone's going to do that. Probably a few people are going to do that. That's kind of too obvious. Let's see. What else do I like as far as fiction goes? I mean, I think about my childhood, and a lot of the books I read didn't really have illustrations, like even like Judy Blume or Beverly Cleary or R.L. Stine or any of that stuff. So I'd have to make it up. Like if my favorite book at one time was Dear Mr. Henshaw. And if you ever read Dear Mr. Henshaw, I read this. This was the first book when I was 8, 9, or 10 years old that I read and reread and reread and reread from cover to cover. Like, I couldn't stop reading this book. I read it probably 100 times within the course of a year. I may be exaggerating a little bit, but it was written by Judy Blume. And you know what? Before I tell you the wrong information, I'm gonna actually Google just to make sure that it was indeed Judy Blume, and I'm and see, I was gonna say it was, and I thought I would be wrong, but it's not. It's Beverly Cleary. Why did I think it was Judy Blume? Beverly Cleary wrote Dear Mr. Henshaw, and it's about this kid who writes letters, like fan mail, to his favorite author, Mr. Henshaw. And so it's not really chapters, it's just every couple of pages is another letter. And I don't even remember much about it, but I thought that maybe I would dress up as Mr. Henshaw, but there's no illustrations in the book. And I've looked at a number of different versions of the book with cover art, and it's just kind of an illustration of the kid writing a letter. And none of them are really the same, and I don't know that anyone would recognize that. So anyway, what I'm leaning towards is maybe dressing up as one of my favorite authors. My top 2 choices are either Robert Fulghum or Kurt Vonnegut. Robert Fulghum writes nonfiction, of course, and Kurt Vonnegut writes fiction. So I've got I'm on 2 ends of the spectrum there. Both are easy for me. They're both older white men with gray hair. I met Kurt Vonnegut once. I'm not sure if he's still living, but I did meet him once at when I worked at Barnes & Noble back in 1990. Gosh, it must have been 97 or 98. I worked in the cafe of the Barnes & Noble flagship store in Union Square, New York City. And we had, on the 3rd floor, or the 4th floor, I think it was, we had a podium, and we had, famous authors come all the time. And since I worked in the cafe, I very often got to meet one, bringing them a beverage and some cookies and whatnot. And Kurt Vonnegut was one that I went out of my way to meet. And I actually hadn't even read much of Kurt Vonnegut yet at that time. I didn't read all of his books until much, much later. I actually reread all of his books, as far as I know, when I was incarcerated back in 2011 and 2012. They had them in the library, and I was really happy about that. If you haven't read Kurt Vonnegut and you enjoy fiction, and you enjoy a good writer, I mean a writer that really has a mastery of the language and verbiage, and just it's so it's the kind of writing that really makes you want to keep going. You know what I mean? You don't get bored. You don't fall asleep. Very imaginative. Definitely Kurt Vonnegut. And Robert Fulghum is my number one favorite author. He wrote his first really big bestseller came out when I was very young. Again, maybe 8, 9, or 10. It was called Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And most of you have probably at least heard of this book. If you've not read it, highly recommend it. Robert Fulghum used to be a minister. He is since been a famous author. He's published, gosh, I don't know how many books. I've got a few of them. I've read probably not all of them, but most of them. And he writes very kind of inspirational. You know, they're all like these stories of his life and things he's witnessed, and just really cool, like uplifting, positive stories. Some of them are even about tragic things, but the way he writes it in such a positive light and just kind of makes you smile after each very short chapter. And again, someone who writes very well. Someone who, you know, you can't help but want to read the next sentence. You don't want to put these books down. So I think I'm going to wind up making a decision between the two of them, because I'll tell you at the end of the day, ooh, did you guys? Krim saying she may have lost me. So okay, thank you, Krim. If that was the case, I'm not sure, because on my end I look okay. Oh, okay. All right, so Ron says we're good. So it's just you, Krim. All right. Anyway, we're. It's okay. No, you're not an idiot. We like you over here. Anyway, so where was I go? Oh, okay. I lost my train of thought. So Kurt Vonnegut or Robert Fulghum, because at the end of the day, not only are they two of my favorite authors, and I don't read enough fiction to really like pick a unique character. I don't really like dressing up. I don't really like costumes. It's just not something I've ever really enjoyed. When I was a kid, I mean, I did like do the ninja thing, and did a lot of the like army man thing, and dressed in camouflage from head to toe, and went in the woods. But that was more like not necessarily a costume. Like I really believed I was a ninja. I really believed I was a G.I. Joe, a member of G.I. Joe, or some mercenary or something. So I just don't like it. I don't like makeup. I don't like wearing masks and all that. If I do for a very short time, and so at least if I dress like a older white man, I mean that's pretty simple. Who are you going as?
Nobody.
Oh, stop. Anyway, maybe I don't know. The kids. I think Lily was talking about maybe trying to be Flat Stanley. I don't know if you guys are familiar with children's books, but Flat Stanley is one of her favorite series of books, and it's about this kid Stanley who's very flat, like a piece of paper. And if he like turns sideways, you can't see him. Pretty cool little children's books. So didn't do a lot of housekeeping. I kind of just jumped ahead and talked about whatever. I was a little flustered at the beginning of the show, so forgive me. I've been talking about over the last number of weeks when been able to make it on the air with you guys, how I've been like trying to step up my podcasting game, because like I said earlier, things have changed a lot, and I personally have gone from having to have a rack full of gear, like module after module after module screwed into this 19-inch rack with all wires all over the place, and running into mixing boards and having to do everything hands-on and physical, and mixing this and mixing that and muting this and muting that and bussing this and bussing that. And I became so proficient with it, having done it for so many years, doing live sound and doing DJing and recording. When everything became condensed and digital, and you could literally do it, the same thing with a phone, or of course a desktop and a laptop like I have here before me. It took a little bit of learning, and I perfected doing it one way. And ever since going decentralized, started to kind of do things a little bit differently, because decentralized web works just a little bit differently than the mainstream internet. I do believe it takes a little bit more savvy and know-how. And there's a lot of great software like OBS, for instance, Open Broadcaster software, free and open source, which allows us to do, pretty much have run your podcast like a professional television station or radio station. But again, it takes some practice to learn something new. And I recently started to play around with it and figure out a lot of new cool things about it. And I haven't had the time I used to have. Like a year ago, a lot of you guys know that I was podcasting 4 nights a week, and I was posting, 1 or 2 times a day, 5 or 6 or 7 days a week, and I just haven't had the time to do that lately, and so I'm out of practice. And sometimes when I do get on here, I'm a little bit burnt out. So forgive me. That's gonna change. I actually just spoke to Rondon today about switching this show from Fridays to Saturdays, because Monday through Fridays now I find myself needing to actually work for Fiat to keep things going. And it's okay. Like I said, my wife and I got this job that we actually like. It's cool and it pays enough. But we have had to figure out how to juggle, get somebody to watch the kids, and then I have to figure out how to juggle the music thing and the podcasting thing. And so right now I'm basically consolidating my artistic and creative time to the weekends. And so all I have to do now is figure out what time slot. It's going to be Saturday. If you're Eastern time, of course, it's going to be Saturday afternoons, and that's going to change depending on where you are in the world. We'll always post the UTC times so that it's easier for some people to figure it out. But there's a huge window. I know that Globocop normally has a show on Saturday afternoons, which I miss terribly, and so it'll be whatever time that he's not on, and I don't know it off the top of my head, so I can't tell you right now. But starting next week, I will be on Saturdays, and once I get all that squared away, as obviously I've talked a lot about some plans for the show and things that are upcoming, and a lot of that is behind schedule, and it's okay. Everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. Everything unfolds, the way it's supposed to, when it's supposed to. I do have a lot of guests lined up. You guys know I've had a lot of huge guests on the show over the years, and one of the things that I intend to do soon is to put up a post with links to all the old recordings, like the best shows that I think I've done, with some really really awesome guests, best-selling authors, world-renowned lecturers, experts in their field. Some people I'll mention, for instance, Dana Martin, John Vives has been on the show a number of times. Who else? Let's see. James Trent Goodbody, White Walking Feather, a.k.a. Robin DePaget family, a very good friend of mine who I haven't talked to in quite some time, but I've seen his Facebook posts. I know he's doing well. He just did a martial arts self-defense class for women, which, that's actually a great time now to bring up one of the things that I wanted to talk about. Actually, before I do that, let me make sure here that I've covered all the housekeeping. As I said before, you are listening to Hangin' with Who, currently on Fridays, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 p.m. UTC, although we're going to be switching next week to Saturday afternoons. Here on MSPWaves.com, live and worldwide. We're over in the Peace, Abundance, and Liberty Discord server, where you can join us for the live chat. Anyway, all right, so let's see. One thing I want to remind you all is to check out the website, which I'm going to put in the chat here, so whoever's in the chat can click on it, and if you're watching or the recording or whatnot, you get the right spelling. It's movement19.org. On the website, you're going to get all the different links to all of our social media, including a link to this show. You're going to be able to email us directly, and you're going to see something about the Solar Tiny Sound. I've already talked about this a number of times, so I'm going to keep it kind of brief. All the information is on the website. Solar Tiny Sound is a mobile solar-powered DJ and live PA sound system, which we're using on the Hip Hop is Dead tour, and we are raffling along with Hip Hop is Dead sustainable T-shirts. Anyway, listen, y'all, I'm going to take a quick break because, as I said, I was flustered at the top of the show, and I've got myself set up to play some music for y'all. So I think I've covered enough excuse me, housekeeping. And I've got a lot of really, really important talking points that I'm going to go kind of like regroup, catch my breath and come back and just jump into some of the things I wanted to go over with y'all. And it's just a lot of things going on around the world, things in the news, things that I'm passionate about. And anyway, stay with us, y'all.
If a miracle could save us from the travesty that we've become, if a million suns stand as one, we will overcome, overcome. If a miracle could save us from the travesty that we've become, if a million suns stand as one, we will overcome, overcome.
The whole world tripping, listen, it's still a cold world. The other day had to bury my homegirl. Wrong place, caught one in the face. Plus a man's on the run and couldn't come to the wake. For heaven's sake, you pray God open the gate. In this modern day Sodom, that's the only escape. 10-year-olds are cold, no they don't hesitate. 2 off a G-pack, he chose the whole 8. Catch a 5 to 10, selling 5s and 10s. And the police informer was your childhood friend. In the real world, gotta hustle for your dream. Extend your clips, fix the muzzle with the beam. For the love of cream, it's nothing but routine. Swing on the judge, take a couple for the team. He's the young Capone, he grew up in the drug home. Stranded on the Ave with the blunt and his gun shown.
Miracle could save us from the travesty that we've become. If a million suns stand as one, we will overcome, overcome.
Yo, a live scene theme from a Godfather saga or Martin Scorsese classic, and I'm the author. Drama at the opera, crime story novel, tuxedo suited, silence on the nozzle. Meeting place scheduled at the Broadway musical. Bravo, we arrive in bulletproof limo. Jocko, the underboss of our main source of interest. The Black Widow, cocaine empress, a princess rich from her family's inheritance. Now let's talk business. Begin by addressing the bricks that was missing in the last shipment. At first, everything nice, everything will change. Jocks line up the food, we blessing with the cream. But on this day, he wasn't ready, and my God sends king. I noticed that his normal firm handshake shook, it wasn't steady when he squeezed.
He went from prince to a king, out of a life of rubbish, wearing tailor-made suits, sky dwellers and clusters to perfection, rags to riches, the evil the influence that pushed them off the edge. They said the greed made them do it. You're my right hand, damn, he fucked the trust up, it's ruined. Niggas caught him sliding on his belly, I'm gripping on my hammer with the silence and twisted, contemplating murder. Now I'm about to swerve with my biscuit, but it's my man at the same time. I don't want to do him. He violated, broke a major code bar, which was stealing. Now it's over in the falls of Niagara. He was soaking with a shell case stuck in his head. They found him floating.
Miracle could save us from the travesty that we've become. If a million suns stand as one, we will overcome, overcome.
Allah, let me lay in your arms. Hold me like a newborn. Sing to me your most sweetest songs, the exalted, the most benevolent, the known of all. Keep me safe till I return back to your residence. This earth, my place of birth. As time went through the ages, it got worse. Sicknesses, beheads in Syria. Ebola's killing my people, it's getting scarier. Most fools ain't even real, the chip is here. Deadly flu's being released, contracted through air. Dear God, it's been a minute since I cried out. Since mama died, I never wilded out. We need help like the phone's about to die out. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? We need a miracle. Destroy the FDA for holding back cures so they can get paid.
Okay. And if you don't know, that was a song from Wu-Tang Clan called Miracle off of A Better Tomorrow LP. When that came out, man, you know, I've been a long time fan of Wu-Tang Clan ever since, actually before the first album, 36 Chambers, came out. I remember hanging out with this kid in a hotel room. I don't remember, like, really why they were in a hotel room, if they were from out of town or whatever. I just remember hanging out with some kid who I'd met, hung out with a handful of times, him and his girlfriend, and he was listening to Stretch and Bobbito. If you weren't in the, like, around the New York metropolitan area, I mean, some of you who follow hip hop now would probably know who Stretch and Bobbito is. But at the time, if you weren't around listening to, like, some seriously underground radio late at night, you didn't know about Stretch and Bobbito. And they had Wu-Tang Clan on the air before the album came out. They had them freestyling, and at the time, you know, underground radio like that, there wasn't really any censorship. There wasn't commercials. I don't remember what station it was, but we were sitting there listening to this group that the guy was hanging out with. I remember him having already heard of them. He was like, "Oh snap, yo, turn this up! You gotta hear these dudes, yo!" And I remember sitting there being like, "Oh my God!" Like it was just like they had a style that I think to this day, no one in the genre of hip hop or any other genre has really been able to kind of recreate or even come close to. Not that, you know, not even that they're the greatest rappers or anything, but just like Ghostface and Jizza and Inspector Deck and Raekwon, and of course ODB, rest in peace. They just had a way with words and flow where they just didn't give a fuck. Like, if it made sense and it flowed and it sounded, you know, and it went with the beat, and it was just like, and of course RZA's beats and every beat that they ever used, well, maybe not every beat, but at the time, you know, in the early days, it was just banger after banger. And RZA is just, you know, I've seen a lot of interviews, and I've followed RZA's career outside of Wu-Tang, Bobby Digital and everything else that he's done, and the Ghost Dog soundtrack. If you haven't seen the movie Ghost Dog with Forrest Whitaker, that is one of my all-time favorite movies. One of Forrest Whitaker's best roles, for, you know, in my opinion. And RZA produced the entire soundtrack from beginning to end, and my God, it's just one of the greatest soundtracks, movie soundtracks to me. Anyway, and I've never met anyone who's seen the movie and didn't love it and loved the soundtrack as well. So, you know, when A Better Tomorrow came out, one of the more recent Wu-Tang releases, it's only a couple of years old at this point, maybe a few. There was just, you know, I don't know, man. People were like, "Oh, that's not the Wu-Tang we know and love. That don't sound like Wu-Tang. That's, oh man, it's corny, it's weak. They sound old, this and that." And I'm thinking to myself, like, if you listen to each Wu-Tang album consecutively, right, and I think any good musical group really does this. If you listen to, you know, Grateful Dead consecutively, if you listen to, I don't know, Red Hot Chili Peppers consecutively, if you listen to De La Soul consecutively, artists mature, artists grow, artists change, and they may have a signature style, signature sound. They may have some gimmicks and things. You know, Old Dirty Bastard always sounds like Old Dirty Bastard, but, and of course he died young, so that maybe that's a bad example. But Ghostface, for instance, you know, always sounds like Ghostface. But, you know, a lot of artists, especially in rap music, if you don't evolve, like for instance, like there's some artists that they come out and they're talking about the struggle, and then, you know, 10 years later they got $10 million and living in a luxury high rise and a mansion in New Jersey and getting driven around in a Maybach that they own, and still rapping about the struggle. What struggle? We can't relate, you know. And on the other end of that is, if they're rapping about having yachts and broads, we can't really relate to that either. But nonetheless, that is actually a form of evolving as an artist. It's like, okay, you ain't struggling no more. You got yachts and broads, cool. But and then of course there's artists that evolve in a more spiritual sense, in a more intellectual sense. And I'm not dissing the yachts and broads, believe me. That's just I like how we got an LOL from Cribby. Yachts and broads, right? It's supposed to be boats and hoes. Anyway, going to the store. Cool. Yes, we need bread. What else do we need? I'm gonna need coffee soon, but I'll go shopping with you. All right, y'all. So let's see. So I said I was gonna get into some talking points when I got back because, man, all of a sudden, I was flustered at the beginning of the show, and then I get in the mood, and then I'm kind of in good spirits, and my wife comes home, the kids are home from the pool, and Lugnut's over. Well, Lugnut's actually resting right beside me right now, but some of the stuff I had saved to go over with you guys is along the lines of what usually happens here on Hanging with Who. If you've been following along long enough, normally this show is a one-on-one with one or two guests that I choose for a particular topic for whatever reason that they're they may be experts on this topic, an author, well known within that field and such. And so we try for each show, I would try to stick to the one topic and really get in depth and really get into it with someone about that. And that's something that, as I said, I've got planned. I've got a lot of big guests. As a matter of fact, the one thing I can tell you for sure, one guest, other than having a lot of the guests we've had on come back at some point. As a matter of fact, Dana Martin is going to be back soon to talk about Anarchapulco. She was there. She was one of the official organizers now for the Anarchapulco conference, and definitely interacted with a lot of Steamians. Y'all know that there's a whole faction Steamians of Anarchapulco that goes down every year now. So it'll be really interesting to catch up with her about that. And then another guest that I'm going to be lining up very, very soon is the good people of The Move. A lot of you are not going to be familiar with The Move right away, and you're going to have to do some Googling and some reading. But I know Ziggy over here, One Media on Steemit, knows who I'm talking about. He like myself. He's actually, I think, from South Jersey. I grew up a lot in South Jersey, and so we were exposed to The Move very, very early in our childhoods. The Move. I don't want to get too into it because I got a lot of talking points to go over, but they were a group of African American, black folk, however it is you want to refer to them, that were sort of radical group of very intellectual, intelligent, woke people who were, all about educating, uplifting the black man and empowering, the black woman and that sort of thing. Some very, very positive and good things. And they had a house in Philadelphia where a lot of them resided. And they were a very well organized group of people. And there were children, there were elderly folk, and some, at the time, Wilson Goode was the mayor of Philadelphia. And he ordered a police strike on this house. They were wanted for a number of different reasons, and I don't want to. I'm purposely not going into a lot of detail here because I was probably again 8, 9, or 10 years old when this happened live on television on the 6 o'clock news, and I didn't really fully understand it at the time. And even today, I can only tell you what I've read in the papers and magazines and a lot of really stupid Facebook posts about it. Or comments about it. But I'm going to let you hear it from the horse's mouth. I've got original members of Move and supporters, longtime supporters of Move. I actually had connected with them through my father. I did not know that actually knew original members of Move. I knew he was, always been a supporter of the black community in general. But I didn't know just how close he was specifically with members of the Move. He's good friends with a couple of them and managed to link us up on social media and said, hey, my son does this podcast. You got it. And I reached out to them probably about a year ago. They were supposed to be on a while ago, but neither of them are very computer savvy, and they had some problems not only figuring out at the time I was using Skype and they weren't able to figure out that or Discord, and scheduling during the week was very difficult for them. At the time, some of the members of Move that had wound up in prison for a very long time were actually just being released this year and last year, and it was a really, really big to-do for them and their whole family and all their friends. And they've been going through a lot of healing and a lot of, I can only imagine, PTSD and all kinds of crazy things going on. I didn't even, really paint the picture of what happened with this police strike. Ultimately, the police flew a helicopter over the top of their house, and what they said on the news was that they had dropped a smoke bomb to get them to run out of the house, and I guess they made us believe that it accidentally caught fire. And what happened was, I can't remember exactly how many city blocks of Philadelphia actually caught fire, because if you know anything about the city of Philadelphia, most of the city is laid out in row homes, which in some like in Brooklyn, we call them brownstones, and in some places you might think that they're condos, where they're houses lined up next to each other, all connected, with their own private entrances across an entire block. And so if one catches fire, a very good chance that the next one at the very least is going to catch fire, or the two beside it. And so this actually wound up setting ablaze like something like 6 or more blocks of the city of Philadelphia. The police were shooting at them as they were trying to leave the house as it caught fire. Arrested a number of them who did wind up in prison for a very, very long time, who, as I said, recently have started being released. I'm not sure if they've all been released just at this point. But, again, the reason why I'm not getting too deep into the details here is that we are going to hear it from the horse's mouth. And as I said, Ziggy is from South Jersey and does remember, just like I do. We've had this conversation before. He was pretty blown away that I was going to get these guys on the air. And so now that I'm moving the show to Saturdays, scheduling with them is going to be a lot easier. And I am now set up to to do interviews via a standard phone, a regular landline and or a cell phone. And so that's going to make things a lot easier for them. They're not going to have to figure out how to use a computer or their phone to do it. They're an app to do it. They're going to be able to just call me and I'll put them on the air. And so that'll be really cool. It's going to be a very interesting, very heartfelt, very emotional, very triggering conversation. So I'm basically kind of putting out a little warning, like it's there's going to be a lot of things said that a lot of people aren't really comfortable with and may not understand at first. And I'm going to ask, just like I do all the time, that you listen with an open mind and an open heart. And that doesn't mean that you can't disagree with things and you can't have a problem with some of the things that we're saying on the show. You're absolutely welcome to do that. Let's keep it somewhat civil. I don't care if you curse each other out. That doesn't mean that you're not being civil to me. I just mean, like, blatant stupid trolling and that kind of stuff is just, like, uncalled for. Like, if you want to call somebody an asshole, just call him an asshole. And Ron Dunn says it sounds like good radio. I know, Ron. I know. I'm looking forward to it. And I really miss the old format, and I'm really dying to get back into it. And we will. We will very, very soon. Anyway, drink along with me if you want to. Smoke it if you got it. Thank you for listening to Hangin' With Who here on MSPWaves.com, live and worldwide. So that is something exciting to look forward to. Now, I've told you all about this before. I've got this. If you are on Facebook, I know a lot of you aren't anymore, and some of you have never been, actually. Kudos to you. If you are on Facebook, I've got this private group that you all are welcome to join. I am the sole admin. Oh, actually, no, I think I have someone else as admin there, but he's not very active. I did this years ago. I started this private group because I saw things. I kind of foresaw what was going to happen with social media and all the censorship and the purging that's going on, and it's only getting worse by the day. And, like, it's just amazing to me. Like I said something in the group today, I think, about the fact that, like, Mark Zuckerberg, like, people talk about assassinating, what they wish that the president would be assassinated and this and that, and they say that about every president. At some point somebody says that. Zuckerberg is a bigger threat to us than any president of the United States, really. I mean, definitely a bigger threat than Donald Trump. Stupid fucking ass. But Zuckerberg wields a lot of power over almost 1/3 of the population of planet Earth. Are you listening? Zuckerberg wields power over almost 1/3, almost 33% of the entire population of the planet on which you fucking live. And if that isn't alarming, the fluoride's working. you know, people say like, oh, well, you don't have to use Facebook. Oh, well, yeah, and you're right. You're right. But when you run something that is utilized by a third of the population of anywhere, it has reached the status of utility. It is free to use, and I understand that there are terms and conditions that you agree to upon signing up. And listen, when people post those things about, oh, I hereby give permission to Facebook to use that, I'm the first one to say you're an idiot. You've already given Facebook permission to do whatever the hell they want to do. But that's a separate issue than what's going on between Mark Zuckerberg and just about damn near every government of the civilized world. I have to laugh. I have to laugh. If you don't laugh, I mean, shit. Let's see. You could definitely know at least what at least 1/5 of the population of the planet had for lunch, or what their puppies or kitties look like. That's for sure. But you gotta really put this into perspective, y'all. Like, terms and conditions to use a website, I get it. When you're at the status of utility, you've offered your services completely, your product and your services completely free of charge. And when that many people have come to rely on what you've created for something as basic and important as communication across the entire globe with real friends, real family, and even strangers, I really don't care. You have a tremendous responsibility at that point. And that responsibility is not to any one government. Your responsibility is not to control and squelch what we say. Your responsibility is to make sure that your servers are up and running. And if you want to collect ad revenue, that's cool too. But when you want to tell us what we can and cannot say, when you want to tell us what is and isn't fake news, and the fact is that we already know that you're working for one side or the other, you don't have that right. People have revolted violently against entire governments for such a thing throughout history, and continue to do so to this very day. So don't give me that shit that it's his company, he gets to do what he wants. I'm not going to hear it. Most of us aren't going to hear it. What we want to hear is what we choose to hear on social media platforms, what we choose to see, what we choose to say, and what we choose to share. And I understand you don't want child porn being shared, neither do I. That's a whole different ballpark there. You don't want people threatening that, physical violence. Totally understandable. But you don't like that we tell the truth about vaccines, or that we speak the truth about our government officials who are pieces of shit, who are lying to us left and right, who couldn't give a rat's ass about you at the end of the day, whether you support them or not. Save it. Save it. Do you all realize that in the United States of America, in 2019 years after the alleged death of Jesus Christ, women are now property of at least 3 different states? And that's some real shit. Did you hear what I said? Have you been able to process that and really put that into perspective? At least 3 states, and possibly a 4th today, or coming up, have decided that they own the women residing within their boundaries, their borders. The state of Georgia has made abortions illegal again. And not only have they done that, they said if you leave the state, if you're a woman and you want to drive to another state where it's legal to get an abortion, and then come back to your home in the state of Georgia, you've committed a felony punishable by prison time. The state of Texas has a bill introduced today that wants the death penalty for women who get abortions. And you think it's not going to pass? You think that's a little too extreme? We have people alive today who will be alive probably for another decade or two that can recall what it was like to be a slave because of your skin color. They can recall what it was like to be owned by one person and beaten for even speaking at times. And you think they won't pass legislation to impose the death penalty against a woman who has an abortion? A woman who may have been raped? A woman who may have been raped by her own family member? And you think they won't do that? The fluoride's really working. Turn off the fucking television. Put down your newspapers. Get the hell off of Facebook. What is it going to take? What is it going to take? I want to know. I'm asking a real question. I want answers. I'm serious. I'm asking every single one of you. What is it going to take? I'm not saying it's not a rhetorical question. I'm dead serious. What is it going to take? Because it didn't even take that much in different places around the world throughout history. In 1776, there was no such thing as abortions, but if there was, I mean, there probably was. There probably was. But like, that wasn't even an issue. It was a 3% tax on some goods. In 1776, it was a 3% tax on some goods. People were shot in the head. People were tarred and feathered. Do you know what it is to be tarred and feathered? To have hot tar poured around your body, all over your body from the head first, and feathers dumped on you? I can't imagine. I don't even know if anybody survived that. And if they did, you didn't want to. $1776 wasn't even that long ago, relatively speaking. There are still people alive today who remember being slaves because of their skin color. I had a conversation with a man just 2 days ago, a 67-year-old black gentleman who's actually agreed to be, well, he hasn't agreed yet, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have him on the show. I'm sure he will. His grandma was a slave right here in North Carolina. You know what's crazy? The guy's like just a normal person that goes to work, pays bills, and I would have never even imagined he brought up the Illuminati. He said something about the Illuminati. And I said, you know what, honestly, there was a time I would have been like all about this conversation, but like there's worse shit to worry about than the Illuminati. It goes way beyond that. It goes way beyond that. Listen, we got names and faces. We got phone numbers. We got addresses. We didn't have that for the Illuminati. And we never will. Like, you know, people say, well, you know, people post all the time all over social media, not just Facebook. They're all over there saying, you know, what's going on? The world is crazy. Oh my God. Where have you been? Like, where have you been? I mean, Forgive me, y'all. It's just, you know, I've been called crazy, tinfoil hat, fucking conspiracy theories, all kinds of crazy shit thrown at me all these years. And I used to let it get to me, I'm not gonna lie. But I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to debate. I'm not even here to discuss it. Really. Because I made up my mind a long time ago. A long time ago. And I know some of y'all are with me. I know. And I also know that some of you are scared to death. I get it. I get it. Believe me, I'm not, you know, I'm not even telling you I know the answers. I'm not even telling you, like, I ain't even telling you that I'm not saying I want to take up arms and march towards the White House, because I know what would happen. Most of us would be fucking shot dead in the fucking face. But protesting, arguing about it on social media, you know, voting, like, oh, this is why we gotta vote. Are you kidding me? It's because we vote. This is because we vote. Because we consent. I don't. But because if you walk into a voting booth, you consent to be ruled by pedophiles and lunatics and megalomaniacs who don't give a shit about you. Listen, there are men out there and women that wear blue uniforms and little metal shiny trinkets on their shirts that will shoot you in your face for speeding. People are like, oh, well, you know, that's only if you're an asshole. Oh, it's only what saying no or saying why is to a cop could be being an asshole. Eric Garner said no. He said, I can't breathe. He said, why? And he's no longer with us to tell that story. I mean, I'll ask it again. What is it going to take? I'm not telling you I know. I'm not telling you I'm entirely sure. But we're getting to a breaking point. We must be. We have to be. Let's all take a deep breath. Let's all take a deep breath and come back to the present moment. That was a little much, I know. But I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to apologize for that. And I'll probably do it again. This is serious, y'all. It's serious. Let's jump to another talking point. If you haven't heard of a guy named Jeffrey Epstein, I wasn't terribly familiar with this guy, except that I'd seen his name pop up in headlines here and there, and I did a tiny little bit of research just to make sure that this New York Post article, you know, was somewhat accurate. So he's a billionaire. He's a known pedophile. He is currently illegally, and I'm going to say that in quotes, building a compound in the Virgin Islands. Now listen, y'all. David Icke and Alex Jones been talking about reptilian pedophiles for a long time, and I couldn't even take it at some point, right? I couldn't even, like, I had to step away from that and be like, listen, this is just, like, come on. Let's get back to reality. Let's deal with the issues at hand that we can deal with. I said it is grandiose, kind of dead end street here. But you have to understand, the Catholic Church has, for a very long time, and this is no secret, and this came out in mainstream news recently, and people were like, well, yeah, we've known about this for a long time. Oh, sure. have been running one of the biggest child sex trafficking rings on the planet Earth for thousands of years, for God's sake. They happen to be largely responsible for all these anti-abortion laws, for God's fucking sake. And known pedophile billionaires are building compounds in remote islands. What the hell do you think that's for? What the hell do you think that's for? Anyway, so what I'm doing here is I'm scrolling through the private group here, the Project Peace group, which, oh gosh, did I share it with y'all yet? I mean, I do this every, I did. Okay, I did. Oh, Zig. What is it going to take, buddy? I saw a meme today that was pretty profound. It has the lady leaning over. I think it's I can't think of her name. The Speaker of the House, I think, leaning over to Trump at his desk, and she says, "Here, sir, here's the abortion bill," and and he turns to her and says, "Abortion bill? I thought I paid that." And you know, and that pops up on Facebook, and you get some LOLs and little laugh emojis and whatnot, and I can't laugh. I cannot bring myself to even so much as a little chuckle. I just it's just beyond me. It's beyond me. And of course, here I come across the meme that says Catholicism. It has a picture of three priests doing the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil over three little boys' faces, and it says Catholicism, the longest running pedophile protection program in history. And you know, recently it came out in the news that Pope Francis is supposedly, you know, setting some new ground rules here, where now you're going to be obligated as part of the Catholic institution to report child abuse. After 2,000 and something years, you're barely putting a dent in it, buddy. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all smoke and mirrors. So, if you've been able to stick around this long today, I appreciate it, and thank you very much. You're listening to Hangin' with Who right here on MSPWaves.com with yours truly, your friendly feathered Steamian. And I'm pissed off. And I'm annoyed. And I'm a little confused. And let me jump into something a little bit more positive here. I just came across an article I posted in the private group here a couple of days ago. Yeah, a few days ago. FilterMag.org. It's a good, very good publication. I'm going to share the article with you guys, and the title says, "It's time for people with privilege to come out about their drug use." A lot of you know I've been a huge advocate, proponent for harm reduction and decriminalization, and even a complete and total dissolve of the war on drugs and a disbandment of the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Food and Drug Administration, the USDA, the AMA, the ADA, all these fucking ridiculous, absurd ruling institutions that do serve no other purpose than to destroy our rights, our health, our well-being, our sanity. The war on drugs has been an absolute, utter failure. And it has never been a war on drugs from day one. And there was a time when I would say this and people would be like, oh, you know, they'd agree with me, but like, oh, well, you know, that's just, we figuring this out now and this and that. No. President Nixon was recorded, him and his I forget the guy's name, we're on record. There's a recording right now, you can look it up. And there's major news articles, like headlines, huge headlines, about the fact that they knew the day they declared the war on drugs that drugs were largely harmless and mostly non-addictive, and most people weren't even doing or even dabbling in drugs, and that it was simply a way to re-enslave the black man and woman and child and destroy the black communities and black families and black neighborhoods and continue to enforce basically Jim Crow style laws. We know that 85% of federal prisoners and even at the county level at this point, it's a huge, humongous, it's close to 80%, prisoners are non-violent drug offenders. So essentially people who've never committed a crime. Never, ever, 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 ever hurt anyone. Possibly themselves. That's your business. When you're allowed to consume all the high fructose corn syrup you desire, when you're allowed to give your children all the McDonald's you want and all the high fructose corn syrup in the world, and they can get diabetes and you can get diabetes and you can be 400 pounds driving a car on the highway, and no one pulls you over for that and says, we're concerned about everybody's safety here in case you go into a diabetic coma or something, then by God, you should be allowed to take a bump of blow when you're at a party as a consenting, informed adult. Or smoke a J at the end of a long day. It's nobody's fucking business. And the fact is that while we've been incarcerating mostly black and brown and poor people for their drug use and distribution and manufacturing, whatever else, other non-violent, non-crimes, plenty of privileged, mostly white folk have been doing drugs with absolute impunity. And I'm talking hard narcotic substances. Needles and all. I can tell you from the horse's mouth. I distributed substances for a good 20 years of my life to upstanding, tax-paying, law-abiding white folk. People in law enforcement, for God's sake, with badges on while they were doing the drugs. And so this article says it's time for people with privilege to come out about their drug use. It's been time. For a long time. It's been time. For decades, it's been time. Decades. And so, let's see. Oh, and since we're on the subject of substance use, really interesting, some legitimate scientists and universities and whatnot have been doing studying fish. And it turns out that this is a real thing. I've done quite a bit of research on this. It's in mainstream news. I myself, as a credentialed researcher, I know how to read the science and decipher whether or not it's bullshit and follow the money and all that good stuff. Shrimp and salmon are testing positive for cocaine. And along with cocaine, other psychotropic medications that people are taking and disposing of in the sewers and whatnot. And so these two types of fish and crustaceans have, it's trace amounts, but I mean, there was a time in history where you wouldn't find trace amounts of cocaine anywhere on the planet, so it's interesting, and you don't get trace amounts in marine life unless there are immense amounts being consumed by people everywhere. That's what the science should tell you. I'll repeat myself. And it's up to you to do some reading and do some research if you think I'm full of shit. But you do not find trace amounts of substances in marine life unless there are absurd amounts being consumed by us. And so, I made a little joke, posted the article, and I said, I feel like going out for sushi because I sure as hell love raw. And then I was kind of wondering if you sprinkle some baking soda and grill it, is that crack? I don't think it works quite that way, but you know, you got to be able to joke, y'all. Got to be able to laugh, but you also got to get angry. You're not angry, and the fluoride's working. A photo of principal and teachers at a public school in, I don't want to open the article and read it right now. You'll have to read it yourself. Oh, let me see here. This was a Yahoo headline. So again, mainstream news. In a elementary school in Palmdale, California, the principal and some of the teachers posed and put a picture on their social media of them holding up a noose, which actually hangs in their office. And yeah, people were outraged, and with good reason. And let's see, Rondon says the CIA lost a few tons of shipment and it went to. Well, yeah, well, of course, that's a great. That's probably has a lot to do. I didn't mention that, but Rondon says the CIA may have thrown tons of cocaine off the overboard from their ships, and I don't even know necessarily if it would be the CIA. I mean, I personally have met traffickers who have told me stories about how they had to dump mass amounts of cocaine and cannabis out of their boats for a number of reasons. One guy I met from Jamaica who was sailing with a humongous quantity of weed he'd grown, and his motor gave out. So he was dead in the water. He was floating in sea, and he understood that he was about to float into Cuban waters, actually. And so he got rid of everything. He threw it all overboard. And that happens just about every day. We know, like, you know, news articles will pop up all the time where people find bales of cocaine and weed wash up on the shores of Florida and, you know, and in the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and Cuba. It happens every single day. I can tell you from firsthand knowledge. Boy, I've never gotten that lucky. Maybe I just don't hang out on the beach enough. But yeah, I mean, the CIA, we already know that that's no secret. The CIA has been trafficking drugs for decades. You know, the CIA has been involved with drug culture for a very long time. They're largely responsible for LSD becoming so hugely popular in the 1960s. Yeah, that's absolute truth. And so we're getting down to the nitty gritty here. Oh, speaking of the oceans, oh, here's one of my pet topics that a lot of people are probably getting sick of hearing. But here's a CBS News article. I'm gonna share it with y'all. This is important. This is like, this might even be more important than the abortion issue, only because we may not even survive as a species. So what's the fucking point? I'm keeping it real with you. American breaks record with the deepest submarine dive ever. Now I'm going to stop right there. If you're looking at the article, I'm not even going to read after the comma. American breaks record with deepest submarine dive ever. Now that alone is a headline. That's huge news, right? That, 10 or 20 years ago would have been in the news by itself. Hey, this is awesome. We've achieved the deepest depth, with a submarine. We're going to discover more things and species and all kinds of stuff. We're going to find Atlantis, whatever, right? Yeah, I believe it exists. Absolutely, 100%. Anyway, that's another issue. So anyway, American breaks record with deepest submarine dive ever, comma, finds plastic waste. Now, let's go back over that again. Because if that didn't make your gut tighten up and your neck hair stand up, if that didn't make you, like, I don't know, even like little water in your eyes and like want to stand up and like just run outside and scream at the top of your lungs, the fluoride is working. American breaks record with the deepest submarine dive. So here we are. able to go even further into the oceans than we ever have. And let me tell you, we've gone deep. We've even when they did the Titanic back in the 80s, like that was a pretty big deal. And we've gone deep, and every so often we discover new depths and we discover new species, in the oceans and in the Amazon and all kinds of things, right? And here at the deepest parts of the ocean that we've been able to reach as humans, the most important thing that hits the news isn't some new species. It ain't like the movie Abyss where we discovered extraterrestrials. We didn't discover Atlantis yet. We didn't find another wreck with treasure. We found plastic. A shit ton of it. A shit ton of it. Because it's everywhere. There's not a part of this globe that hasn't been touched by plastic. Some years ago, there was an article I shared. Mainstream news again. I love mainstream news. I'm all as radical and as alternative as it gets. I love mainstream news for this reason. Because y'all don't want to listen otherwise. And you barely want to listen now. But, so there was an article about BPA. BPA is short for bisphenol A. It's one of the chemicals, one of the most important chemical components of conventional plastic. Petroleum-based plastic that we've been using for, since the 1950s. And as much as I can't stomach Alex Jones, I have to credit Alex Jones for being the first one to turn me and millions of other people on back in the late 90s, early 2000s to the presence of BPA in plastics. And at the time, it was present in all conventional plastics. Every child's toy. Every plastic thing that babies put in their mouth, that we touched, that we ate food out of, that we microwaved food in, that we put hot food in to put away in the fridge, that we put all kinds of acidic foods and things in, had BPA. Why is that a big deal? It's an estrogen mimicker. It's an endocrine disruptor. It's carcinogenic. It leaches into your foods whether it's hot or cold, acidic or not. The minute you touch the outside of that Rubbermaid container, if it's not BPA free, you're getting BPA in your hands. Matter of fact, there was a documentary released some years ago called Plastic Paradise. Very well done. It's all about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, right? Garbage Rift. And at the time, many people around the planet thought that was the only place where there was... And I mean, I don't even care if that was the only place where there's plastic in the oceans. That alone should have been enough to start a revolution. Now, it's quite literally every fucking where. And in this film, the girl who directed it went to a laboratory and had her blood tested and found no BPA at first. Then she got a receipt, a printed receipt from any store, just about. She had just whatever random receipt she had in her purse or wherever it was. And she crumpled it in her hand for a second. And I'm telling you, it was a couple of seconds of she just crumpled in her hand the way somebody would, like if you wanted to throw it out in the garbage real quick, be in your hand for just like a few seconds. And then they tested her blood, and her BPA levels went through the roof. And that was the first time the mainstream public found out that it wasn't just in plastic things, that it was in the ink, and largely responsible for the fact that cashiers, who were primarily women, I don't know now, but it seems that way. So statistically, mostly women who worked as cashiers had a higher rate of cancer because of the BPA. And probably not just the BPA, but largely due to the BPA in the receipts. Now, there are a lot of stores now that get BPA-free ink. I know one of the supermarkets, at least two of the supermarkets we shop in, it's BPA-free ink. What Alex Jones didn't tell us so many years ago, which we found out much later, is that there's another version of bisphenol, BPS, bisphenol S, which is also just as toxic. And there's other chemicals in plastic that are toxic. There's nonylphenols, which no human should be anywhere near. So, hey, listen, my family and I, we went through the whole make sure it's BPA free thing for years, and we had all kinds of plastic still. You can't know all this stuff all in one shot. You know what I mean? There's not enough LSD in the world for that. But, you know, one thing at a time, right? And so why I would mention that is because, like, another study that was done is they went and tested people in remote parts of the world who never had any exposure to plastic. Indigenous tribes in different parts of the world. There's, you know, a lot of people, when you say, like, indigenous people, a lot of people think, like, South America and Africa. There's indigenous people everywhere. In every region, every climate, every part of the world. And a lot of them are still, you know, there are still people who still live very traditional lives. There are still tribes who haven't come in contact with modern technology and all that. And some years ago, we looked at some studies where they were testing the blood of some of these indigenous people who had no exposure to plastic, and because it's in the oceans, they had BPA in their blood. And here we are in 2019. Going deeper than we've ever gone anywhere on this planet. And the most important discovery that hits mainstream headlines is that we found plastic. A lot of you are sitting around waiting for your governments to pass bans on plastic straws and plastic bags and styrofoam, and Dunkin' Donuts is going to do away with styrofoam by 2020. Fuck you. Fuck you. I won't apologize for that. And if I didn't share the article yet, did I? Yeah, CBS News. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And don't tell me, well, I've got children. I got to live this hustle and bustle life, and I got to run to work, and what the hell am I supposed to do? And if I eat out, I've been through all that. However, I know this is hard to stomach. But I'm here for you. I'm not going to yell at you, and I'm not going to curse. And I'm not going to judge you, and I'm not angry with you. I'm angry, yes, in general, yes. But again, I've been there. I'm not even going to tell you it's easy. By any stretch of the imagination. My God, no. No. But I want to help you. I can help you. And maybe not me. There's lots of other people. There's plenty of groups on social media. There's plenty of resources out there on YouTube and even DTube and even Steam It. There's a lot of zero waste Steamians. Believe me, they love that tag on Steam It. It's one of the reasons I fell in love with this platform. And it gets easier. It gets easier. And once you rip off the Band-Aid, once you really let it sink in and you realize, like, you know, I can do this. Listen, it's an addiction like anything else. I know it ain't easy to stop things that you're used to and comfortable with. Even when you know it's hurting you or others. I know. I get it. But once you get through that initial struggle, that initial hump, it only gets easier and easier. And then, what I find is it's harder to go back. And listen, we've made a lot of mistakes. My family and I have made a lot of mistakes along the way. We can't remember every single time, everywhere we go. For instance, when we go out to eat, that's still a struggle. To have to remember to be like, oh, no straws, no lids for the children, yeah. You know, we try to stay away from fast food, and the other night we were coming home really late, and Wendy's was the only thing open, and we agreed years ago that if we have to eat fast food and we see a Wendy's, at the very least we can order things that only come in paper and cardboard, and we don't have to take any condiments, and we don't have to take any silverware, and I've only ever seen Wendy's have, unless you get the really, really large sodas, the smalls and the medium are paper cups. So if you don't take a straw and a lid, you've got no plastic. And then, you know, people say, well, what if I went in the car? Listen, I've gotten in the car with no straw, no lid. I'm a 40-something-year-old man. I know how to get in a car with no straw and no lid and not spill my soda. And I have 2 children who have yet to spill a drink. As a matter of fact, we went out to eat years ago when we first started this whole thing, and we went to a diner, and I did remember no straw, no lids at the time. And the kids were like, had their drinks like too close to the edge or whatever, and I'm like, why do you do this? You gotta move it. And as I did that, I spilled the drink all over the table, and the waitress came over and laughed at me and everything. So don't give me that. That's just an excuse. And I understand. But I'm not going to be easy on you. I'm not. Because I've been through it. We've been through it. We're still going through it. So anyway, we went to Wendy's late night. And we got nuggets, a chicken sandwich, and fries. All comes in paper and cardboard, right? We ordered, because the soda comes with it. And we remembered to say, no straws, no lids. We get to the window. And sure enough, she hadn't put any lids in any straws on the cups, but they were plastic cups. And my wife and I looked at each other, and remember years ago we decided if we have to eat fast food, it's going to be Wendy's, because we figured all this out about Wendy's, and we made a lot of trial and error. We went to a lot of places to figure out where our family can go and where our family can't. And we'd never seen Wendy's serve small sodas in plastic cups. And the girl's like, well, this is what we have. And we're like, oh, like, Lugnut, come here. Come here, Lugnut. Come here. I just got to get him away from the window, and then he stops barking. Sit down. Lay down. Good boy. Lay down. Anyway. And so, like, you know, we looked at each other, we're like, oh, what the fuck? And we said something to the girl because, like, we'd even been to that Wendy's. It's the one just, you know, half a mile up the road. So we'd even been there already. Lugnut. I know it's upsetting. I know. Plastic is destroying your world. I know, buddy. I'm working on it. Doing the best I can. Anyway, and so we've said something like, oh, and of course when she walked away from the window, and my wife and I had a brief conversation, and we're just kind of thinking like, especially, okay, I know that a lot of people are ignorant and have never, probably most people in the service industry do not encounter people like us. I understand that fully. But it also depends where you are. There's a lot of places now that are getting hip, that are banning things, and, you know, there's been CNN and National Geographic, like major headlines, you know, as you can see, CBS News, Yahoo, whatever. And we happen to live in Asheville, North Carolina, a place that is very, very, very hip and woke, and you very rarely see single-use plastic and plastic bags, and there's a lot of bulk stores, and there's a lot of people into sustainability around here. And, you know, most places with their to-go containers for food are compostable, and even their flatware, if they have to-go flatware, is compostable. And, you know, I'll save this for another show, but I'm actually not okay with compostable plastic. There's a lot of reasons why, and we'll talk about that another time. But nonetheless, in the grand scheme of things, it's better. Okay, I'll agree with that. And so they at least make an effort. And so that's why my wife and I kind of looked at each other, and we're like, you would think that common sense would dictate. Here I live in a city where, you know, you just don't see much in the way of single-use plastic. And here comes somebody who orders ahead of time and says, please, no lids and no straws. And you would just think that it would get the gears turning just a tiny little bit, and you'd think, I've tried to put myself in the girl's shoes, and I think, I mean, maybe there was a time in my life where I would have been, you know, I was ignorant too, and I would have just mindlessly just poured it in that cup and just not put a lid and a straw in it. But I didn't live in a place like Asheville. I grew up in New York City and New Jersey, where they're still tossing straws in the ocean. You know? I mean, hell, when I was a kid, medical waste was washing up at the shore, and parents didn't want to take their kids to the beach. That was a real thing. Parents wouldn't take their kids to the beach for fear we would get needles in our feet from hospitals dumping. This was a real thing. New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, all up and down the East Coast, they were literally dumping medical waste in the ocean directly. Like not like I went to the landfill first and then like somehow. No. They took trucks and dumped it in the ocean. And you dump anything in the ocean near the shore, it's going to wash up. Especially if it floats. So when I was that age, when I was working in the service industry, like, yeah, I was ignorant. Of course, I wouldn't have thought that way. I don't imagine I would have. But I think that if I lived in a place like Asheville and grew up in a place like Asheville, and maybe she didn't grow up here, I don't know anything about her. And as much as we were upset, and as much as we may have kind of initially judged her, and been a little angry about it, I had to sit back and say that, hey, listen, this may be the first time in her life that she's encountered such a thing. And the only thing that really made it kind of shitty is that she left the window of the drive-thru where you pay and you pick up your food. She left it open and she stepped away to go get the rest of the food. And my wife heard her talking shit to her coworker, manager, whoever, about us not wanting plastic lids and straws, and then saying something about it being in a plastic cup. And we were very nice about it. Please, we've been doing this for a long time, and we understand. And when our initial encounter with people is always very polite and cordial, and we've educated and turned people on. A lot of people have even thanked us, and especially when we're repeat customers, people recognize us like, hey, and like now at the supermarkets, like they know that we want the paper instead of the plastic, and we want this and that, like and it's cool. It's cool, but she turned around and said some shit and really pissed my wife off. And when she came back to the window, Mary said something to her. She was like, it's really shitty of you to talk trash about somebody who cares about your world. And I could see that it touched her. She didn't say anything. She couldn't say anything. She just like sat there like dumbfounded with her like her blank stare on her face. But I could see that she was processing it, and who knows? That may have changed her. I don't know. I'm sure we'll be back to that Wendy's. we have late nights coming up. We get the munchies. Anyway, we're coming up really, really close to the end of the show now. I have to thank you all for hanging with me and sticking with us. And oddly enough, I was just about to shout out my peoples over at Kanikure and my peoples over at Greenhouse Radio Online, now two separate entities for a number of reasons, which we may get into on the show at some point. Definitely got to shout out all my wonderful people over here at MSP, MSPWaves.com. Definitely thank you for your service, and thank you for putting up with me all this time. It's definitely an honor and a tremendous pleasure, and I always gotta show love to Steam Music Association, all my peoples on from the Spotlight on the Artist Show, and One Media, Divine. I definitely gotta shout out my man Termite. I gotta shout out everybody over at The Ramble, formerly known as Steam It Ramble, particularly Shadow's Pub and the Kitty Girl and all the wonderful people over there. If you don't know about The Ramble, if you're on Steam It, if you're posting on Steam It and you got some pretty cool posts that you want to pimp, come over there on Thursdays, twice a day on Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern and 7 p.m. Eastern. They do the Pimp Your Post Thursdays, where anybody who shows up gets to present one post of yours or anybody else's, preferably under the 6 or 7 day payout period, so that it can get some love and accrue some value, some monetary value, and you get to present more than one post if you want to, but you have to go get back in the queue, to present others. So I really love what they do. And yeah, thank you, Zig. Zig says, and if you're not looking at the chat, Zig is saying great show. Zig, thank you so much, man. It means a lot that you hung out here today and stuck with this. And I will keep you in the loop. You'll be the first to know when the Move decides to schedule for the Saturday show. So I'll remind you all again, Hanging with Who will now be changed. We'll be switching to Saturdays. Sometime if you're in the Eastern time zone, sometime in the afternoon. I haven't figured out the time just yet. So we'll either be on either before Global Cops Frequency Waves or after. I have to figure out exactly and look at the schedule and see what's going on there. But yeah, that'll be starting next week, each and every Saturday here on MSPWaves.com. At some point, I will be coming back again to SMA to do Viscosity DMB, my drum and bass podcast, and The Roadblock, my hip hop and house podcast. I've got to really start focusing on the Hip Hop is Dead tour and the Solar Tiny Sound raffle. It's a big fundraiser, which I've been very terribly behind on. But we're gonna get into that. Like I said, we have a show June 29th in Baltimore at John Vibes book release party for Paper Squares and Purple Stars. If you're anywhere near the Baltimore area, I would love to see you all. I would love it. I know there's some Steamians up and down the East Coast that can make it. So definitely, like, if you do make it, like, reach out to me on Discord or Facebook or wherever beforehand. Let me know you're coming. I would love to give you all a hug and a handshake and play some music for you. It's going to be a great time. Again, I might be either Kurt Vonnegut or Robert Fulgham. Maybe I'll let you all decide. Maybe I'll do a post if I get a chance to do a post beforehand and see if I can let the audience decide who I should be. But I'm 90% settled on either one of those two because, again, as I said, I don't really like the whole costume thing. So that'll be a way for me to just kind of just put some different kind of clothes on, basically. I think when I met Kurt Vonnegut, he actually had long hair too and a beard. And Robert Fulgham, he doesn't have long hair, but he does have a beard. But he has a head of gray hair. He's getting pretty old now. I started following him on Facebook. Anyway, thank you all. It's been a pleasure. Stay tuned, MSPWaves.com.